There's a fruit that grows on a thorny shrub, ignored by supermarkets, misunderstood by gardeners, and quietly eliminated from the fields it once healed. It produces more vitamin C than strawberries and oranges combined in a single serving. Its oils are so rare that modern science is just beginning to understand them. Its roots rebuild soil destroyed by decades of intensive agriculture, and its history stretches from ancient Greece to the coat of arms of Madrid. Yet today you won't find it in any supermarket aisle. In fact, in some regions of Spain, they tell you not to even plant it. It's not because it failed us or stopped working. It's because it succeeded too well in ways the food system couldn't control. This is the story of a plant that nourished empires for entire centuries, stabilized ruined soils when nothing else could grow in them, and gave us one of the most powerful natural medicines ever discovered. A plant so useful, it was erased from Spanish collective memory. Welcome to where we unearth what they tried to hide. If you're new here, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss any treasure. Every video here is a chest we open together to reveal lost knowledge. At first glance, it looks like an overgrown hedge, thorny and a bit wild, but that unkempt exterior hides an extraordinary botanical survivor. This is a plant built to resist the worst possible conditions: harsh winters, salty air, dry, rocky soil where nothing else survives. It thrives exactly where other crops wither and die without remedy. It doesn't just survive in difficult lands. It actively repairs them while growing. Its roots dig deep, anchoring in rocky soil degraded by erosion. Along the way, they form a unique partnership with special soil bacteria. This bacteria extracts nitrogen directly from the atmosphere around us, storing it in root nodules to feed the plant without external help. That's what makes this plant different from any other you know. It creates its own fertilizer without needing help from expensive chemical bags. While it grows, it enriches surrounding soil for future generations, making it easier for other plants to follow and thrive where they couldn't before. That's why it was once planted across entire regions of Spain to combat erosion. This fruit is just one of those the food industry doesn't want you to grow. There are 7 others like this that your grandparents knew perfectly in Spain. In this video, I only talk about this particular fruit and its forgotten history. But if you want to know the other 7, click the first link in the description. There's a complete guide showing what they are, how they work, and how to grow them. Now let's continue because there's still much important information you need to know. It holds the earth together when everything else is falling apart. It's not just a common plant, it's natural infrastructure that grows itself. It's an ecological repair tool that requires no maintenance whatsoever. The moment you understand how its roots and biology work, you begin to realize why this shrub should never have disappeared from Spain. The berries look small at first glance, almost too small to matter, but inside each one is a world of nutrients that modern fruits don't match. These bright orange clusters are incredibly rich natural sources of vitamin C. Per gram, they contain several times more vitamin C than supermarket strawberries or oranges. Even after freezing or processing, much of that vitamin power remains intact. But what really distinguishes this fruit is something you almost never find in a berry: oil, and not just any oil, but 2 completely different and valuable types. Most berries in the world are basically water and sugar, nothing more. This one is completely different because it produces 2 unique medicinal oils. One comes from the seed and the other from the pulp, each with distinct properties. The seed oil is loaded with essential omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, fundamental nutrients for brain, heart, and nervous system health. Meanwhile, the pulp oil contains omega-7, an extremely rare fatty acid, a compound only found in fatty fish and macadamia nuts in similar quantities. These oils aren't just nutritionally dense, they have distinct medicinal functions. One supports internal health of organs and systems. The other is prized for healing skin. It's a berry that feeds and repairs at the same time, something practically unique in nature. Once you understand everything packed inside this small fruit, you realize this isn't just food, it's botanical technology disguised as wild fruit. It's been on Madrid's coat of arms, Spain's capital, for centuries. You see it every day on statues, logos, flags, and souvenirs throughout the city. The bear and the tree, the most recognizable symbol of the Spanish capital. But I bet you've never eaten its fruit despite seeing it constantly. Its name is Madroño. The tree that has symbolized Spain's capital since the Middle Ages and completely disappeared from Spanish tables in less than 50 years. In ancient Greece, Pliny the Elder wrote extensively about its healing properties. Romans planted it in their villas as an ornamental tree and source of natural medicine. In medieval Spain, peasants made brandy from its fruits every autumn, a tradition that lasted centuries in the mountains of Extremadura, Andalusia, and northern Portugal. The Madroño fed entire generations of Spaniards during the harshest winters, until one day, without anyone noticing, it simply stopped doing so. The Madroño was never treated as an enemy by Spanish authorities. For entire decades, it was treated as an environmental conservation hero. Governments deliberately planted it in damaged and eroded landscapes, in places where absolutely nothing else would grow without constant human intervention. It was used to stop erosion on slopes, stabilize overflowing riverbanks, and reclaim lands that had been stripped by industry and intensive overgrazing. It worked exactly as promised, even better than experts expected. The plant spread rapidly across terrain that had been completely sterile for decades. Its roots sent underground runners that permanently anchored soil. Dense thickets formed that protected earth from wind and erosive rain. Soil that once blew away with wind suddenly stayed firm and united. Other plants began returning to zones that had been completely dead for generations. In broken and abandoned lands, the Madroño acted as an ecological pioneer, preparing terrain so plant and animal life could follow and prosper. But the Madroño's success came with consequences no one had anticipated. In places where land was supposed to remain wild and without human intervention, the Madroño continued with its biological programming of territorial expansion. It shaded smaller native plants that couldn't compete for sunlight. It reclaimed space aggressively, exactly as it had been designed to do. What had been praised as exemplary resilience was labeled as invasive threat. Conservation agencies began issuing warnings about its cultivation. The same traits once encouraged were now framed as dangerous and harmful. Nothing about the plant had changed at all. It remained exactly the same. Only the political and economic context around it had changed. The Madroño did exactly what it was designed to do: grow without asking permission. In systems built on total control, that kind of independence is never tolerated. Even if you wanted to grow Madroño in your garden for its incredible nutritional value, you'd quickly encounter the single obstacle that stops most people: harvest, the process of collecting its fruits without destroying them in the attempt. These berries don't hang comfortably like apples from fruit tree branches. They cling firmly to branches completely covered in sharp and painful thorns, so tight against the wood they almost seem permanently fused to it. Those thorns aren't decorative, they're sharp, rigid, long, and relentless. Harvest inevitably becomes an extremely slow and painful process. All kinds of mechanized methods have been tried to solve this problem: freezing entire branches, shaking them violently, cutting complete limbs for processing. But every shortcut invented damages the fruit somehow or compromises its final quality. Juice is lost during the process. Valuable oils oxidize and lose properties. Time supposedly saved ends up consumed in cleaning, sorting, and waste. Some serious estimates say it takes up to 600 hours of manual labor to harvest a single hectare of Madroños in a way that preserves fruit quality. That's not just inefficient from practical and economic standpoints. It's completely impossible to justify in the modern industrial agriculture model. Compare that to wheat or apples, crops that machines harvest in hours. The Madroño never reached Spanish or European supermarket shelves, not because it wasn't nutritious or because its flavor wasn't appreciated by consumers, but because it simply didn't behave as the food system needed it to. Its berries bruise so easily they're impossible to transport long distances. They're soft, acidic, and cling to branches as if guarding something precious. They don't transport well in trucks, don't stack neatly in standard plastic containers, and don't last more than a few days once picked from the tree, even refrigerated. Modern food systems depend completely on uniformity and predictability. Crops are developed not just for yield or flavor, but for transport logistics: how well they fit inside plastic boxes, and how many days they last on a shelf. The Madroño doesn't fit any of those industrial categories that define modern agriculture. Its berries have irregular shapes that don't stack, vary enormously in size and maturity, oxidize quickly when exposed to air, and their flavor, though medicinally very valuable, doesn't satisfy the sweet, simple, predictable palate of current mass consumers. So instead of adapting the distribution system to accommodate this extraordinary plant, the plant was simply expelled from the market and completely forgotten, not because it lacked nutritional or medicinal value, which it has in abundance, but because it demanded too much care, attention, and respect to fit into the system. The Madroño wasn't rejected for failing us in any measurable way. It was rejected solely because it couldn't be domesticated or industrially controlled. The Madroño was never truly lost, never stopped existing in the Iberian Peninsula. It just went silent, patiently waiting for someone to remember it again. Now, quietly and without asking anyone's permission, it's slowly returning. Not through supermarkets or controlled industrial supply chains, but through passionate gardeners, traditional foragers, and small farmers, people who no longer wait for system approval to grow what they consider valuable. In backyards and food forests throughout Spain, thorny shrubs reappear along rural fences, in permaculture hedges, and on farms where diversity matters. The Madroño is finding its place again in the land it should never have left. Remember, the Madroño is just one of 8 fruits the industry doesn't want you to grow. The other 7, with complete step-by-step guide, are in the first link in the description. If this treasure spoke to you, subscribe and hit notifications. Every like and share helps preserve knowledge almost no one learned. The next treasure arrives soon. Don't miss it.